Hello, everybody. So today I'm here to discuss some of the changes and alterations that have been made for the 2020 AP History exams. And what we need to understand is these are just broad generalities, and your teachers will specify some things for you. But hopefully, this gives you some clarification on what the expectations are going to be, what some of the changes are going to be, and then how there are some kind of just different things that are being emphasized here or expanded for the purposes of this essay. Okay, and remember, I'm trying my best here. We're doing this on the fly, but I trust that we've got it. Okay. The basic breakdown again, a 45-minute time limit, a 5-minute time to upload, and you will be using only 5 documents for this mini DBQ, if you will, which most of you will be taking at home. So what is staying the same? Okay, we still have our context point. All right, typically this will be in your first paragraph in which you, quote, describe a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. When you see quotes that I have on here, this is me using the information from the College Board. And so in this case, we're going to describe the big picture of when or where the prompt is referring. Make sure you use specific events or patterns when describing the theme of the era. You may need to broaden the context if it is something like a change or continuity over time format. Okay, but you want to make sure that you're working in the general area in which the prompt is talking about, whatever region, whether it's Euro, US, or world. You might need to do stuff a little bit before or after the prompt, especially if it is a change over time prompt when establishing the scene. And remember the idea of context, you really want to give a basis of what you're writing about. You want to give the reader an idea that you know what this time period is and what were the big themes that were going on. Okay. In the context point also, I want to stress that you don't have to have like little, the Boston Tea Party, and like you don't have to be like super, super crazy specific, but you really should be able to give a good sense of, hey, these are the kind of the broad patterns that were going on during this time. And then, of course, we have the thesis and claim, which is the same, responds to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis/claim that establishes a line of reasoning. And some things to remember with this: make sure the thesis is within the time period region of the prompt, make sure to be clear and concise, and don't explain evidence in the thesis statement. Sometimes we're like starting to try to write our essay within that first paragraph, and we're not trying to do that. We're trying to be very clear. And in general, from what I have seen and discussed with a lot of my colleagues, you're really looking to try to make about 2 specific points here. That's about the time that we're looking at. Okay, now we have some changes. So the way that we're using documents here, okay, before it was, basically looking at numbers of documents, and now we have like a 3 kind of tier system here. So you get 1 point if you accurately describe the content of at least 2 documents to address the topic of the prompt. So that means is that you're kind of discussing some pieces of documents in a way that references the topic, but not necessarily your argument. This is basically you summarizing here. So for instance, if you're doing something about the Cold War and you look at a couple documents and you show how those documents are indeed about the Cold War, well, that'll get you a point. But that's about all you're going to get out of that. So this is kind of your basic summarization that, yeah, hey, I know what these documents are about. Now, next level is supporting an argument in response to the prompt using at least 2 documents. In this case, you refer to specific ideas in the documents that lend support to your argument that you've proposed. So now we're saying, hey, I think this about, say, the Cold War, which actually could be an essay for all 3 of these exams. Oh, no, not Cold War, sorry, US 1 or US history. You're not getting up to the Cold War. I apologize for that. But, well, there could be something about, say, American imperialism, and imperialism is, a broad category for all of the AP histories. And so in this case, you're going to have this idea about specifically about, say, imperialism, and then you're using ideas that are within the document to show how your point is correct. Now, if you do that for 2 documents, that'll get you a different point. And then finally, if you're supporting an argument in response to the prompt using 4 documents. So here you do reference material that's in the documents, but then again, you specifically show how it supports your argument. That's the key thing here. So we're always referencing material from the document. So the goal is to get to 4 documents, okay? If you're a little unsure and maybe it's like, okay, I understand this document is one part, I understand this document is a second part, maybe that's just what you run with and maybe you go for 2 points here. I figure everybody can probably score a point in just describing what a couple different documents are about, but then using it to support your arguments. Are you going to do that 2 times or are you going to do that 4 times? That's basically what we're looking at here. So we're expanding the rubric now, okay? So already at this point, we're at like 5 different points. Okay, now moving on. Now we have evidence outside the documents, okay? In this case, we're going to use specific historical evidence beyond what is found in the documents relevant to an argument about the prompt. I have here specific is what is important. You have to talk about specific events, people's movements here. We're not being very vague. We're not talking about, hey, trade was important. You need specific events. This is you showing your knowledge of the content. What's interesting here, so on the other DBQ, the original DBQ, you would do this only 1 time. Now, you can do it an additional time to get a second point. I would caution you, though, you want to make sure that you know these 2 events pretty cold, okay? Meaning that you like, yes, this event definitely relates to it, this event definitely relates to it. Because you don't want to just like throw something out there like, I hope this works, because then it can take away from your overall argument. But in this particular case, you have another opportunity to get a point here for using evidence that is outside of the documents. But some specific things, okay? Evidence, again, must not be included in the documents. You cannot get this point through your context. So context is separate than outside evidence, because you might be referencing things in your content or your context that aren't in the documents. That's not where you can get evidence points from. It has to be in the body of the essay, and it must refer to the argument, as I have number 4. And here it must be more than like a phrase or a reference. You can't be like, just like the moon landing, and then you leave from there. Like, that's not going to work. You have to kind of explain that specific topic, explain how that event is yet another thing that supports the argument that you're making. If you know one really well, use one. If you're not sure of a second one, don't. Don't just throw something in there just to throw it in there. But if you have 2 different ideas and 2 different events that you feel really work well, then make sure you use them. All right, now, point of view, we're back, okay? And this is kind of a similar thing, but again, we're doing it more than 1 time. And it's very specific. So before, on the previous rubric, we were looking to do POV on 3 occasions, and if you did it 3 times, that got you 1 point. Here, we're breaking it down. We're looking at POV 2 times, and you get a point for each time you use it. So once again, you explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, or historical situation and or audience is relevant to the argument. You do this for 1 document, or you do it for a second document. The key thing here is folding it in. You can't just say like, hey, this document was written by a government official, so they're biased. Okay, well, why would that make them biased? How is the historical situation or the time when this is written influential in the document? Okay, why is who this document is written for influential in the document, and how would that impact your argument? This is really, really crucial. We can't just throw point of view out there and just say, hey, I know that this is clearly written by a government official. Well, okay, yeah, that's great, but you need to tell me why that is significant. Okay, so you have that inherent bias in there. What does that bias mean for your argument? All right, really important to look at it that way. And then finally, we have our catching a leprechaun point. A lot of people call it the unicorn point, but this is the complexity point, okay? The response must demonstrate a complex understanding, which must be part of the argument, not really merely a phrase or a reference. And I'm not going to reread all of those things down there. You can pause and look at it. The whole idea here is that you're providing depth to your argument, that you can see different sides, that you can see changes and continuities, okay? That you can take your argument and qualify it or modify it with differing opinions that you can reference. This is a really, really hard thing to do. I'm going to be completely honest with you, all right? For some of you, it may actually happen kind of naturally, especially if the DBQ is on a topic that you know real well or that your class is really focused on. But the idea here is that you really have to focus on the rest of the structure of the essay, I think, in order for this to kind of come out. And this is something that I feel that you should truly think that you know, like, yes, I definitely know this kind of version of the argument, or I know my similarities and differences and continuities and changes. Like, I can really focus on those things to provide you that complexity point. But it's something that I don't think you should get hung up on. It's something, you really need to hit those arguments. You only have 45 minutes, right? So you need to hit those documents, you need to create those arguments, and you need to go. All right, this isn't something that you have to be like, how can I describe this nuance and things like that? I think if you have a really good handle on the essay and you develop it and you kind of strengthen it, as a result, you're going to get a really nice essay that this point can kind of, stem from. All right, guys, so that is the new stuff. I'm sure you're going to be talking about it in all of your classes. I know I'm going to talk about it pretty extensively in mine, okay? All right, guys, so I will see you soon, and have a great day.